socks off. 10 toes down to the ground right now. Right now. Think I finally figured out who I am, what my style, but I'll keep my soul.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chef Life with me, Alistair. Today we're here at the awesome Bear Kitchen in Wakefield, the man who coined the phrase awesome, in my opinion, with Ben, the owner and head chef here. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Just if you'd like to start off, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, how you got here, your journey, and then we'll get into some stuff.
So Bear Kitchen started off literally 6 years ago. We're looking at August 6 years ago. It's crazy to think how much time's passed and what's been going on. And primarily what we were doing is we wanted to sort of take high level sort of like chef driven, not complex food, but like good food. Yeah. And introduce it to the fast food market. Yeah. We felt that there was a genuine gap in that area. And so we chose Wakefield, primarily due to the fact that it was on the M1, the M62. It sounded really weird, but that's why, you know, it was sort of like, it was somewhere which was going to happen, like with Leeds and the gentrification of that. Yeah. And we were looking at overspill. Yeah. So we thought, well, let's take it to sort of a provincial town instead of going to a city centre. Let's get food which is real. So we were looking at Americana. I spent a few years living in America. My family still live in the States.
Nice.
So it's like Connecticut, so just outside New York. About 45 minutes drive from Manhattan itself. Nice. And it was really taking that, like New York deli, where you turn up and you get the chicken scarp in the roll and they basically wrap it all up, throw it in a box, and there you go. So we did that 6 years ago, and it's been an absolute roller coaster since. We've had everything else. We've had the COVID, we've had the cost of living crisis, and we're sat now in a restaurant area which at first we didn't think we were going to have. Yeah. We set up as a takeaway. Yeah. It was primarily takeaway, and we're now we've got a little restaurant, you know, we've got 36 covers, and we're trying to push up some really amazing food. So that's where we're at.
You've still, what I really like, I mean, we've worked here about 4 or 5 years now. Yeah. But I like how you had like an ethical vision for the business, and you've really stuck to that. And it's one of the themes we see across some of the chefs we talk to is those ethics matter almost as much as how you're preparing that food. Do you know what I mean? That draws in the customer.
I think, you know, you say almost as much. I actually think we're at a point where it is just as important. Fair. You know, and, you know, we're in a situation where we can create, we know, like with the training and the sort of understanding of food and flavors, that we can create sort of very high quality food here. But part of the whole ethos behind business is trying to push forward not only something that tastes good, that it's got sort of I don't like to use the word ulterior motive, but at the same time it's health conscious as well. Yeah. So, you know, everything from where we source things, what the interaction is behind it, the scenes, and going down to sort of how we employ our staff and the sort of positivity behind that. You know, like in terms of our staff, we, you know, worked very closely with people who have been in very tough situations, from coming out of prison to growing up in sort of like disadvantaged sort of areas, and really trying to create a positive environment where they can come in, they're able to learn some skills and progress in the real world, which is a very difficult place nowadays. Yeah. So, you know, we've got that side of it. And then coming into the food side of it, you know, we're very focused in, as I said, the quality, but also how that interacts in our daily life. Yeah. And fast food has got a little bit of a bad rap, I would say. You know, like generally, it's viewed as being bad for your health, and also sort of possibly even bad for the environment. Yeah. And as you said, there's an ethical side of it, and we're trying to counterbalance that.
I think you do that really well. I mean, I think what I've really enjoyed watching is the evolution of your menu from when you were takeaway as you've added in the restaurant. I feel you've got more creative. Not that you weren't creative and just takeaway, but you've got a bit more adventurous with the flavours, not just stereotype. What I would have, if I was telling my friend what Bear Kitchen was, I think it's very different. 2 years ago, how I would have put you into words is how I put you into words now.
Yeah.
Because your specials are kick-ass. Like, I love it.
Well, that's exciting for us. You know, like, you know, we work with yourselves, which has got like an amazing sort of array of, especially like the Far Eastern ingredients and stuff like that. And that's really exciting. We also we've worked with charities which are to do with food waste. And really look at, you know, it from an environmental point of view, where that food itself hasn't even got to market. You know, it's literally from between the farm and the supermarket. It's like, that doesn't look right, it's going in the bin. And I think that in itself is a disgrace.
It's true.
And we need to really work, you know, as an industry at sort of getting better with that. So we work with that side of things. And that in itself, you know, being able to like procure awesome ingredients and be able to be put in a ready, steady cook every week, where you go, well, here you go, here's some ingredients, go for it, is absolutely amazing. And that's where the sort of, I would say, the drive and the ingenuity comes from.
And so just going back a little bit, so how did you get to this point then? So what was your sort of program from little Ben to where you are now?
Well, I have now, which is really scary, I've been in the industry well over 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
Which is,
you
know, I've not really done anything else.
Yeah.
It started off with me going to university, interested in politics, interested in history, and being somebody who wanted to sort of change the world.
Nice.
Looking at a social work sort of side of things eventually. And at the same time as this all happening, I was always involved in kitchens.
Right.
It was like the byline job that I was doing all the way through.
Yeah.
And I remember sat there, you know, in my little studio apartment at the time thinking, do you know what, Ben? You love this. You've grown up with this. I grew up with my grandparents had a restaurant on the Isle of Wight.
Nice.
Grew up there, and I used to go in the kitchen as like, you know, a 6-year-old and be fascinated with it. And I thought, this is a path you can take. This is something that you can do. It's something you're really, really invigorated by. And so I started off in fast food.
Nice.
You know, which most chefs want to talk about their sort of like the prestige. No, there was no prestige. I started off working in like KFC. I worked in the first Subway that had ever existed in Leeds.
Awesome.
Which was very busy.
Yeah.
I worked within sort of pub chains, which, you know, everything was boiled in a bag or a microwave. And I was doing that. So I got used to the service side of it. And I got to a point where I went, right, do you know what? We're going to do a summer season. So I went down to Cornwall. And worked in Polzeath, which is opposite Padstow.
Right.
So Rick Stein country. And worked in this beautiful, it was called Finn's. It was a beautiful, like 22 cover seafood restaurant.
Lovely.
Where the fishermen used to come every morning, drop off a crate and go, there you go, boys.
Yeah, lovely.
So, and I had this head chef who was from New Zealand. Who was bringing in at the time, and we're talking, this is 20 years ago, fusion. And it was the first time I'd ever seen this sort of like fusion cookery, where he had obviously grown up in a world where Japanese ingredients and sort of Southeast Asian ingredients were quite the norm. And we hadn't really seen this over here that much. It was a little bit. So I was trained in that environment where, you know, you've got a fresh fish, and it's like, right, that's what we're doing tomorrow. And that excited me, and then from there, I didn't look back.
Awesome.
Worked in basically Michelin star, rosetted, worked my way up, and then, as you said, 6 years ago, decided let's do it up for ourselves.
Nice.
You know, and so that's.
I think you've really changed this. Like, it's interesting from, as we were talking before we started the podcast, your little Facebook videos I used to watch for your little cup of tea. Before you started this, loved it. And then I think that, I'm not saying you started this locally, but the the wave of trying to be a bit fancier fast food, I think you led that, especially around here. There's not, and I still don't think there is anything really close to you, especially
thank you.
Wakefield. No, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. Like this, and I think it's been really interesting working with you, watching that progression as well, and equally your assortment of ingredients that you're buying.
Yeah.
Because then we had the COVID thing, and it was just like bang, 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 and then I think you kind of, with the restaurant, like we said earlier, found your feet with that and really expanded out, which is awesome.
And thank you so much for that. It actually genuinely means a lot.
But sure, but not me saying. I mean, you can look around, brother. There's not, there's pimp my fry type rubbish. But that's it. There's no thought going into it. It's kind of.
And I think that's where we're at 6 years later. Is there's a lot of thought going into exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're really trying to look at each individual sort of ingredient, where it's come from, what it does to you, and how it sort of works from there.
Yeah.
And we've got some coffees coming. Awesome. This is exactly what we need.
Nice.
And it's like even down to, for example, like our coffee. We work with a local roaster, and we've developed our own blend to the point where we're able to actually turn around and sort of say, well, actually, it's got natural processed Ethiopian in there. It's got a little bit of Brazilian and a little bit of Cuban.
Nice.
And we sat down and we sort of like played with the flavors and tried to work it out. And we're going down to that level. Nice. We're looking at the salt that we put onto our fries. Yeah. We've worked with that. It's not just salt. We're working that down into like, we've used like garlic in there, a little bit of onion in there. We're looking at herbs, a little bit of spice, but not like in a heat sort of way. Yeah. Just to sort of like put it in there and really punch that umami through.
Yeah.
So that's where we were. And then personally, I wouldn't call it sort of a quest. Well, you could call it a bit of a quest, but it's looking at the impact of ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
And in being a chef and caring about what I want to create for people, I've been listening to multiple books about this and, really fascinated with the impact of not only sort of the quality of the food, but how it impacts us as individuals and as society, which, it sounds really nerdy, but I think we really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, in terms of sort of where we want to go with this, we're on sort of a mission to try to really look at reducing anything that we use from an ultra processed point of view, and going towards everything made in house in a way, and looking at sort of really sourcing certain ingredients to be able to aim to us to get to that point.
But I think that's interesting because one of the themes we see from Rosetta Michelin outlets is a lot of it is they've got a garden on, they're inevitably beautiful country manners, blah blah blah. They've got a garden on the estate. For example, Josh at Goldsbury, he picks from the garden every morning, Shane at Woodall Spa, etc. And then that will go in, like you were saying with the fish, that will go into the dish and the menu for that evening.
Yeah.
But then I suppose what I find interesting with you guys is scaling that into an affordable meal, and you're not dropping 80 quid for a tasting menu.
Yeah.
You're getting quality that you want to eat day in, day out. But then it's how do you take what you're saying and turn it into a commercial? Well,
this is the point, isn't it? Is like, how can we sit here on the bottom of Westgate End in Wakefield and try to produce something which is tasty but also has got sort of an ethical background with it without charging £20 for a burger?
Yeah.
And that's been the mission, really, is like, it is breaking down to looking at every single ingredient, from the beef that we use, to the cheese that we use, to the bread that we use, to the seasoning that we use, and really sort of, trying to weigh that up. And there's a side of it of, as a nation, why should we only be able to achieve like sort of like the level of quality through going to a restaurant where you're paying a significant amount of money, and it is no way bad mouthing them. You know, they are in themselves amazing.
I find that you're paying for the technique and the effort level at that point. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think to put it into the masses' hands, there needs to be a level of standardisation. I'm not saying it needs to be ultra processed, but there has to be a point where to make it commercially viable, you know, you're like, right, I can offer these 7 dishes. Yeah. But I can't change the menu out every 6 weeks.
No. And I think that's where we're sort of looking at it, you know, as you said, that standardisation, that's where I think there needs to be real work within the food industry.
Agreed,
at looking at how people can make that choice. Yeah. And understanding the level of, you know, if we're going to get very political about it, but also like almost the level of corruption and the level of control that major players have over the food industry. Agreed. And this is something that as a chef, I've always been interested in. Yeah. And then recently it's really trying to sort of create a grassroots movement of educating people about food and understanding if you sit down in our restaurant and have, you know, a burger, that there is a side of it where it's, you know, the connotations behind that is that it's bad for you, it's a treat. But once it's in a situation where everything in that burger is actually natural, there's no ultra processed foods, they've not filled it out with gums and stabilizers and emulsifiers to sort of bulk it out. That is real food. Yeah. And we should be proud of the fact that eating real food is good for us. Yeah. And it's not trying to say that you need to eat cheeseburgers every day, but the fact that you should have the confidence of where you pick to eat your food sort of impacts your life, you know, on the long term.
I think it's really interesting as we get older, although I look so I'm 27, I'm not. It's a myth. It's a myth. But it's funny. One of my good friends, I think you know him actually, Johnny Watson. So he's big in his health and fitness, does little Facebook videos and stuff. But I kind of go to him because he spends a lot of time, similar to yourself, thinking about this sort of stuff. So he grows a lot of his own fruit and veg. But again, as he's getting older, you can see where his thinking changes, and he's more interested in putting things that he knows almost from farm to fork into his body. He's interested in fitness, which focuses on mobility, because he's like, as you get older, that's what's going to go first. Yeah. And there's real thinking behind what he's saying, you know, it resonates. And I kind of feel this, as we all get older, that's more important. And to your point there with the government, I find it hilarious that all the big businesses from COVID got all the bailouts. Don't worry about paying it back. Little businesses like ourselves, not such a big deal. You've got to pay that back straight away.
Everybody got a little bit of a kickback, but that did really nothing.
I find it hilarious that if you know you had a magic wand, putting time and effort into the food chain, how our children eat, and changing that thought process behind that, along with say fitness, etc. That to me is a lot more important than everything else I want to invest in, like ultra broadband for everyone. Like,
yeah, and I totally agree. I think we're at a situation where we're at a tipping point. Yeah. You know, and the research which is literally coming out sort of as we speak is talking about our food industry, talking about the way that it's been sort of proliferated, you know, purely for profit. Yeah. And, you know, we sit here and we talk about, oh, well, you know, what do we need to do to be able to help it? And as a business, we're like, oh, well, we'll do all the best. But when you're looking at schools and you're looking at like the NHS and you're looking at sort of public responsibility, you know, it needs to come from a much higher level than what we've got. And, you know, and I think it's down to businesses like ourselves and other like-minded individuals who are able to look at this and go, do you know what, let's change public perception on this. Let's actually educate. Yeah. Because, you know, in the days of phones and in the days of sort of like that Google knowledge almost that we've got now, it is, you know, everything's sort of like at your fingertips, yet you're very much led in specific ways. Yeah. And I think for people who have got a specific almost presence, you know, like yourselves and like ourselves, it's down to us to really sort of work in a way that we can start to educate people to understand the impact which food has. Yeah. And food, you know, I always grew up with, if you go, and as you were talking about chefs who go and pick stuff from the garden, and you go out to the sea and you fish for a fish, and you create it there and then, we all know as a nation, we all know as individuals around the world that is amazing.
Yeah.
But why have we been led down this sort of path, which is leading down a very different route to sort of mass-produced food-like substance almost? That's bulked up with lots of nasties.
Oh, it's hilarious. So my background was more supermarket. So I worked for a number of different brands, and we went to Sainsbury's, Tesco, etc. But when the horse meat thing was a scandal, I found that hilarious. Like some people knew, I just can't believe they've done it. I'm like, you can't pay £1 for 8 lasagnas or whatever it is, or 20 burgers frozen. You've got to think about who's involved in that. A farmer that has to grow a cow, feed a cow, manage a cow, all that stuff. The processing plant, the producer, the factory workers, all the packaging, the marketing department, let alone Tesco taking 60%. Do you know what I mean? And then you're paying £1 for it. Like, what did you think was going to be in it? Yeah. It's not Daisy the cow, where Bird's Eye know its name.
Exactly.
It's I just kind of feel there's a real disconnect with people with food. So I think I'm in a privileged position where my daughter gets to come in a place like this, meet people like you, Northcote, all these beautiful places. So I think she's hopefully got a better understanding than, say, Bob's kids, who doesn't. And their closest connection to food is whatever mum buys from Tesco. Yeah. And let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be cheaper as cost of living goes up. And then the odd trip to Mackey's. There's got to, for me, to your point, there's got to be a perceptive change in the way we raise our kids around food.
Totally agree. It's scary.
Yeah.
And we sit there on the sort of precipice almost. We serve burgers, we serve fries, we serve sort of, that food that's got that image of being unhealthy and negative for society. But in itself, is a big difference between us being able to sort of look at exactly where that meat's coming from and exactly where those ingredients and what they do to everybody else.
Yeah.
And, the only thing I can ask for as somebody is I want to see more ingredients that I am able to look at and say, I understand where this coming. Where is this French fry coming from? What potatoes is it made out of? And how does it interact with things like the gut biome and my customers? I don't want it to taste awful. I want it to be good, but I also want it to be natural.
Yeah.
And who is doing that right now? And where can we sort of look at doing that? Or is that a case of we have to do everything in-house?
Yeah.
And why is there a system where that exists?
Yeah.
And, how can we look forward at changing that? And
agreed, it's got to be commercially viable. I keep coming back to this, everything's got a cost. So what we found when I bought this business, it was mainly cafes we went into, which was all price driven. So it was commoditized, cheapest bit. They didn't care where it came from. Bacon, no, some broad strokes here. Not every cafe's the same, but they just want the cheapest beans, the cheapest bacon. I'm like, I don't want to be in that business. I want to work with creative people like yourself, and that to me is more interesting, but more long-term security for the future of hospitality catering than anything else. And you've got extremes like Lisa at Northcote, which is phenomenal things, and that's real artistry. But then equally, what you guys do is artistry in its own right. The people might come here for the ethics, but I bet they stay for the food, without coining a phrase.
Well, that's the truth, isn't it? It's like the ethics have to go alongside. It takes the back seat.
Yeah.
If you're able, as a chef or as a business, able to produce something fantastic, people want to get on board with that. Absolutely. And that's what people talk about. They come here and going back to sort of you were saying about what really led you to sort of doing this. I think, with working in the more fine dining element, and you'd be sat there and it was, people would eat it in a sort of exploratory manner. So you'd sit there and go, oh, well, actually how this element works with this element, I'm really impressed with. Yeah. And you would break it down to such a level. Whereas I feel like with Bear Kitchen, it's almost about the primal element. It's like you take that bite and go, oh my God, that's amazing. For me, that primal sort of reaction is far more satisfying than somebody breaking down the elements. and trying to create something like that, which also has got the positivity behind it, is the ultimate goal, really.
It is, but I think you hit that. I mean, as we said earlier, without covering all ground, I think the beauty of the addition of the restaurants allowed you to play with different flavours. So it's moving further away from burger and fries and more into a bit more fine dining, but I'd say for the masses, maybe it's a better phrase than that, I'm not sure. But you're introduced to a lot of new flavours.
It's awesome food, isn't it? It's like actually creating genuine home cooked, but to a level of 20 years plus. The guys in the kitchen who've also got multiple years of experience. It's created by people who've got a genuine passion, who love eating, who love food, and care about not only the environment but also the impact that food's going to have on you. And that in itself, in a nutshell, is what we try to do.
Absolutely. And I think, again, to your earlier point, I think I always feel the food industry gets a lot of misconceptions. So there's people we've met over the last couple of years where they go vegan because they think that's the right thing to go and it's best for the environment. But again, it's a lack of understanding. A bit like you were saying with the gut biomes, you go into Tesco now, it's full of kefir. And I would say 5 out of 10 people buying that product have no idea what it's for or what it's doing. They've read it in whatever.
They've been told.
Yeah, exactly.
And the industry sits there with labels telling us what's good for us.
Exactly.
And actually, when you talk about kefir, I at home, I make my own kefir and water and milk, and I find it very important that my children, I've got 3 kids, sort of consume this sort of stuff. I think really looking at the long term. But I'm somebody who has lived, worked, breathed, cried, fucking everything with food. And that's somebody who's so passionate about it, and that's where I'm at. But the average Joe, hasn't got an understanding by that. Doesn't sort of link themselves in. And, I think when you're looking at sort of labeling, when you're looking at the packaging of things, I think we really need to look at legislation again. In terms of, the government being involved to say, look, guys, you need to really tell people what's going on with this and the impact it has. Because a lot of the time, without being scaremongering, it's lying to you.
Yeah, of course
and, how we perceive that packaged food, it's healthy for us, it's got no added sugar. Well, that's not what it's saying at all. And you have to be taught on how to read those food labels.
Oh, it's true. But then I think you're right there. What I've always found interesting is to take my mum and dad, for example. So they'll go to Asda and they'll see the Simply the Best or whatever, the top. And they think, top bananas. Really, it's got more sugar, salt and fat in it than the standard own label version or whatever. And I'm like, but that's not... The things which are delivering the taste are things which aren't particularly great for you. Do you know what I mean? In my opinion, in the pre-packaged, ultra-processed foods. But it's the packaging leads it in because it's sparkly and it's, you've got some celeb chef on the packaging and you're rock and roll.
Which actually, as a chef, really upsets me. It's like you're looking at people, and I'm not going to use names, but you're looking at very high-level celebrities putting their face onto things. Who maybe have even gone out there and tried to sort of champion positive eating and positive foods, and it's...
At some point it's cash.
And that's what it comes down to. And, how can we, as a nation, really start looking at this? Is it going to take a point where, we're looking at, we have these big questions like what we're going to do with the NHS and, how is the country going to move forward after... I would say the last 13 years of really being sort of, put in a position of negativity, especially the last 5 years from COVID and, the cost of living. How are we going to move forward? And it takes legislation. It takes us to look at the food industry in the same way, and I don't want to be too alarmist, but like as the tobacco industry and say there needs to be actually scientific data and people looking at this in a way which is going to lead us forward to create a healthier nation so that actually the impact on things like the NHS isn't the same as it is right now. Because right now we are stood there on a precipice, looking into this future where we're getting fatter, we're getting unhealthier, and we're addicted to foods where we don't really understand the impact that they're having on us.
Oh, great. But it's just come on Netflix, that Blue Zone documentary, which has been around forever. Like, I've heard different things about it over the years. But it's true, if you go to certain elements of Greece and things in Japan, I mean, obviously we do a lot of Japanese.
Italy and
but that's all. The meal time is a family time, and work. It's not a sandwich at your desk. I think that the way their culture's evolved, certain ways of living have stayed. Whereas I feel in the UK, it's you got to push, push, and it's hard as a business. But then equally, from my perspective, every morning I have a certain number of hours to get everything in out the day in terms of all the guys who work the business and stuff. And it's you end up, whilst that's maybe the route I'd like to take, financially I have to do this because the government wants to do 25% corporation tax, and they want this, and they want that, and they want the other before I pay anyone. And you're like,
and you're handcuffed.
Yeah, exactly.
You aren't able to make that positive sort of move, and that's what we're asking for. I think as business owners, we sit here as business owners talking about business, and I think we feel restrained, and there's no positivity. No. Why aren't we legislating in a way where positive actions and positive practice are actually promoted?
Absolutely.
Why is it always a negative? Oh, if you don't do this, this happens. Where's the sort of like impetus and almost the sort of aim to be able to get businesses to act positively?
There is,
And where is that?
The problem I have without getting the politics of it, I suppose, is that you look at what's been in the media over the last 6 months. It's all politicians cocking up with this and not declaring that and having parties and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm just trying to run a business to make sure it gets paid, man. Like, but there's no comeback for that. And the same with what he did with the electric cars and stuff the other week. I'm like, this is what you set out to do, and now you're moving the goalposts. And obviously, I don't make electric cars, but I'd be pretty pissed if I was Ford and I'd moved all my engineering.
More than pissed.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know where. For me, I don't know where your average guy eventually stands up and starts a party or whatever and takes over. And a bit like the Canadian government thing, my mate sent me this ages ago where a doctor is head of the healthcare system, and maybe he's an ex-chef, he's head of the food standards, or where actual real life experience dictates policy. That to me is where you get change. And until that happens, which who knows if it ever will.
And I think that's we're talking about sort of changing the world now. And I think. All we can do as business owners is try to, we can't dictate what people do. But we can offer choice. And we can talk about the positive choices and the positive impacts. And, everything from, when you were talking about having kids in and, how do we teach the youth about positive food choices? That's what I'm interested in as a chef. There's so many other positive choices to do with the environment and, what car you drive and how to just talk to people and things like that. But how do we make positive food choices without becoming sort of almost an oppressive system where everybody's like, well, I can't go there because they're trying to feed my children lettuce all the time. It's like, well, that's not what we're trying to do, but we're trying to also have an eye on the fact that these are young people, and why? And this is another real thing. Why, when you look at specifically children's menus, is it full of garbage? Why have we created a system where inherently it's okay? I'll sit here and have my nice situation, and they can have the thing that's been thrown in the fryer, which has been ultra processed and is full of garbage. Why have we allowed ourselves to get to a point where that's the norm, and that is the norm? But
it's the same though, back to my comments on the horse meat thing, is that I think your average person is normalised to a certain price on their shop.
Yes.
And that's why organic and fair trade kind of came and went away. And then I'll come back, it's this waves, it's not the standard. And for me, that should be the standard.
Yes.
And, yes, food is expensive. to grow and to harvest and all this stuff.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about regenerative farming and all that side of things. Yeah.
And I just think there's got to be a change in terms of, do you know what? You can't go to the cinema as much or do whatever it is you like to do with spare time because the food shop is a bit more expensive, but you get more quality for your money. Paying double the price for Heinz baked beans, someone's making more money out of that. That's all that is. But really, the organic side of things, that if that's where you want to put your money. So would
you be basically saying that you think that the only way that that's going to change is through legislation?
Yeah.
And through governments around the world working together to almost subsidize these products and promote positive business practice?
For me, it comes down to your own nation. So, I have real issues at the moment with things like the cost of living's gone up. Do you know what? Let's take a year out of foreign aid. I haven't got a problem with foreign aid. I think it's a good thing, but fix your problems at home for a year, personally. Or put your own money, just for 1 year, just take all that money and put it in the programs to...
Shall we look at maybe the, the situation of foreign aid as like, should we look at who we're investing in?
Exactly,
and their track record?
Well, my friend Lee put, what was it the other day when the guy said, we give India money and they've got a space program. I was like, it's fair, isn't it? It's tough.
Yeah, we don't.
It's just stupid things like that. I'm getting above my station here, I sell spam. But it's, I think there's, what I worry about, to your point there, we say my daughter Ruby, is it's the choices that I think you get moulded, a bit like what we were saying, your grandparents, Isle of Wight restaurant, and this led you to this point in your life.
Yes.
So if I can impact her as much with food, because I've had a problem my weight up and down throughout the years, but I'd rather...
Really? You look great, man. There you go. Like,
you don't even have to buy me a lobster dinner, baby. So, but that's the thing. Like, I'd rather leave her with... She's got the knowledge that maybe we didn't have as kids, because it wasn't as prevalent.
The education.
Yeah, exactly. To make the right choice. And I think that's as important as learning maths.
Yes.
Because that's going to shape her life and health for the rest of her life.
Which is going to impact things like the NHS and, of course. Now, if anything, it's, it's a pillar of our society. If we're going to have something like a National Health Service, well, then it needs to be brought right back to let's teach people about what they eat and the impact on health. And we fail on so many levels. And, I think it's my responsibility as a parent, primarily, as you said, to educate my kids.
Yeah.
But we're also people involved in the industry.
Yeah.
And, there are a lot of other people out there who aren't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who aren't going to watch a podcast like this because for them, it doesn't really make much sense. No. And it's not until we're able to sort of like be loud enough and scary enough as an industry, and it's calling upon you chefs out there and other people to really learn about this sort of almost crisis that we've got and demand that we have change. And without that happening, nothing's going to happen, and we're going to stay there in the same sort of hamster wheel and just keep on going, and we're all going to get fatter and die earlier and be more unhappy. And it's about of why are we like that? You look at the industry in itself. When I first started in this industry, it was something you were doing 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and that was not weird. That was genuine. And as a company, we're now we're trying to bring in 35-hour working weeks for our staff. We're trying to bring in positive sort of mentality where the work-home life balance is sort of really part of it. And, it was always a badge of honor. Like for me, it was like almost that sort of self-harming element of it where you'd go...
Go in your stripes.
Yeah, I've earned my stripes. I am a chef. I can do 80 hours a week for a prolonged period of time. I've worked for 37 days without a day off. It's like, well, that's just abuse. And, if we really need to look at that sort of level, and I feel that actually as an industry, that is coming in. Like we're really starting to see changes in that sort of level.
I think, from speaking to other customers, they feel COVID's done that.
Yes.
Because some chefs who were half in, half out, went and did someone else. Actually, they've got the weekends back, they've got their evenings back, whatever. And there was a real crisis, I'd say, a year ago about, one of the pub chains we deal with, they could not get chef for Billy across a number of different outlets, and were paying stupid money. And it's, I feel it's come back a bit because chefs have got the passion and actually I don't know, working for Amazon or whatever, it isn't quite that exciting.
And also you're looking at like, I think the food culture in this country in terms of being chef driven is so much better.
Yeah.
And that's come through things like social media, it's come through the television, it's come through the media of people, like you've got the progenitors of that, like your Gordon Ramsays and your Jamie Olivers who have, taken children and invigorated them in a positive way to enter into the industry and be driven and dedicated towards it. And like we get young kids in and they sort of want that Gordon Ramsay environment, and it's like, guys, no, it's not. It's not always like that. It's about can you get invigorated by the food? Let's get positive about that, and then maybe we'll bring in a little bit of sort of like
a bit of fun, bit of flair. But it's true. But then it's interesting to speak. I mean, I'm privileged because I get to work with cool people like yourself, Lisa, etc. But then the amount of younger guys and gals have got coming in, like Nathan with White Hart, most of his team, I'd say, are probably early 20s, if not younger. But they get, he's trained under some Michelin-star chefs himself, the same as himself, and you just get to like soak that. If you've got the right mindset, you get to soak all that knowledge up. Do you know what I mean? You get all that, everything, all your experience. You've probably been the bad stuff, and they get all the good gear.
Yeah, and that's it.
But again, I find it's same in my business. It's mindset. We stay in this a long time to get the right group of people, but again, it's mindset. If you've got the right mindset, that attitude, man.
And if you can be a positive person in a harsh environment. Hopefully, from that, those young people who are going to enter into that environment have got, as you said, the mindset to be able to sort of proliferate that as a positive thing. And I think I think that's actually happening. I see that over the years. Positive work ethic and people really trying to sort of have care and attention to things like mental health and the impact of work in your home life. And it's really asking other people, I think, with everything we've been speaking about before, it's really asking those chefs and people out there to start looking at the other side of things as well. Is look at your ingredients, look at what's going on there, read your ingredients list, and demand change. Because without doing so, we're not going to change things. And like, they've grown up in an industry where change in terms of, it's not cool anymore to work an 80-hour week. That's not where we're at. So if they're able to sort of look at this in a much more positive way in terms of where their ingredients are from, what their sort of, aim at the end of it is to create positive food, healthy food, create a healthier nation, take the pressures off the nation in a way. And as being in the food industry, it comes down to us to be able to do that. And
I suppose the beauty working here for a young guy or girl coming in is that they get a good foundation in the ethics your business stands for, plus then the technique side, which you guys teach from your experience. And then, I know you're creative with the guys, like I've seen it for years. So
we go down to the level of like with our desserts, we make everything from scratch. If we've got marshmallows in a shake, for example, we make the marshmallows. It's not sort of, we're not buying things in. And I think to be able to sit there, the other day we had somebody, we got foragers who go out and like, pick mushrooms, and we got a bunch of crayfish the other day, invasive crayfish. And we're there like, well, what do we do with this? It's like, oh guys, here we go. We're going to boil it up. We're going to basically, pick them all out. We're going to make a really nice bisque. We're going to reduce that down to a glacé. We're going to then, sort of like put that onto a burger. So you're sat there with this sort of like, maybe a chicken burger or a fish burger or something, glazed in sort of like, crayfish bone stock, which has then got like a slaw on top of it made out of beetroot, fennel, and crayfish tails, and like sort of like sliced up and put through. And it's like, well, one, who else is serving burgers like that? I actually don't know. But two, why aren't we as a nation, we sat there with crayfish as an invasive species. Why are we not utilizing them far more? Why is there not speak about this? And why are we like, as I said, I, grew up and sort of spent my time at the seaside growing up as chef. Why are we still utilizing lobster, for example, when we've got this amazing ingredient that has got a beautiful flavor that we should be turning around and celebrating? And that's what should be everywhere. It's like, get rid of these, They are doing our rivers, streams, and lakes a massive injustice. Utilize them, and and be passionate about it, and at the same time, it creates a environment for young chefs to sit there and go, oh,
what am I doing with this?
What am I going to do with this? That's cool as fuck.
Yeah, it's cool as fuck, man. No. Yeah. And do you find, from a customer perspective, because I'd imagine, guessing here, but I'd imagine a lot of your customers are returning, because I certainly am.
Yes.
It's wicked.
Yeah.
So do they go, my problem is here, is the stuff I like, well, I like everything you do, but there's 2 items in particular I get a bit of a sweat on for. So I always go for those, but then I want to try something else. And do you find that people go for the specials more so, or are they mix and matching what they're doing?
So I think it's mix and match, really.
Right.
I think we try really hard to come out with, we don't try to say weekly or daily specials, because the way it works for us is we create something like that burger I was just talking about, and once it's gone, it's gone. So that could be a day, that could be two, 3 days. But what we found is that with our genuine sort of repeat customers, is they start off with picking something off the sort of main menu, and then from there they start to get a little bit like, oh, what's this?
Bit of trust,
And part of our sort of repertoire, what we found over the years, things like that, if we had put that crayfish burger on 5 years ago, wouldn't have sold.
Right.
And we've built up a trust now where people go, oh, we trust you to be able to produce something that is not only really tasty, but also maybe a little bit innovative or maybe a little bit different, and we're willing to give that a try.
Awesome.
And that for me is like actually one of the most amazing things, to be able to sit there.
That's testament to what you've done.
And it's sort of, I think over time, with our menu, I don't want to sort of take away from what we're doing, because I think we've got a core, line of products which people keep on returning for. And there are plenty of people who come in and eat the same thing every time, or they look at the menu and there are certain products on that menu where people go, that's what I'm going to have, and you can almost guess what they're going to have at the beginning. But I think from a specials point of view, not only is it good for the chefs in the kitchen to create like positive, creative energy, but also it allows us to sort of teach them about loads of other items. And as we found, as we were just saying, customers now actually rely on us for that. So there are a huge amount of customers who, if we don't, say if we've not changed the specials in a couple of days, they're like, oh guys, have you got anything new on? And we're even down to level where it's like, actually we do. Secret menu.
Nice.
Sort of like you're ringing up, it's like, we'll knock something up for you. That's like a little bit different, because we've got chefs in there. As long as you're not coming in at Saturday night, 7:30, asking for something like totally bespoke, we can pretty much do it. If we've got the ingredients, of course we can. And that's fun. That's and that's positive.
That's what you want from a business though, man. Like that's where you're going to keep on going back, because there's that special touch. Back to the fine dining. I imagine some people enjoy the fine dining because of the service. And we were talking about before, which I'm sure we'll come on to, like that's its own service,
yes.
You've got a date with Tina and I've got my mate Ben's going to hook me up with something flash, and there you go. It's a cool little perk, isn't it?
And I think you're talking about service and stuff. And like I personally, as somebody who's even been involved, I still, if I go to a really high-end restaurant, even as somebody who's been involved myself for 20 odd years, I sometimes am intimidated by the service. It's like I sat there going like, am I actually doing, am I eating this properly? And it's like, nobody should really care, man. You should just be able to just go like, that's amazing, but you can't. And you sit there, you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And I think part of the whole Bear Kitchen thing is like, remove all that. Our way that we try to produce service and like try to get that customer coming back is, imagine you're coming over to your mate's house, and he's just the most amazing chef, and he's just like knocking you up some amazing food. Sit down, and it's like, here we go, guys. This is what you've got. This is what we're doing today. What do you want? And I feel like that is a much better, and for me as somebody in the industry, kind of way, to sort of promote good food and positive food, because that intimidation can turn people off, I think.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's definitely a thing. I mean, we deal with a myriad of clients, but I mean, home in Leeds, Liz, phenomenal chef. She's got one there, phenomenal menu. Love Liz to bits, and Reese, her main guy. But there, because it's beautiful, you go in there and that's what you think. But it's equally so homely in terms of how inviting they are. Beautiful place to eat, beautiful service, real special treat. But it's, I don't know, it's different experience, isn't it? And equally, I know if I bring Rubes in here, she'll have a fucking wicked time, but she'll equally have a wicked time at home. Yeah. So it's, but again, it's atmosphere and it's what you create, and I imagine people come back, definitely for you guys, because you kick, you've done it so long, you kick ass. But you can feel it. I mean, I've come in here on a night time and you guys are, it's like a vibe.
Yeah, it's definitely a vibe.
But yeah, so it's, no man, I think you've done great work there. And I think equally, again, I come back to what's always driven me in our relationship with you guys is your ethics is still the same as they were 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's testament, because so many other customers they've moved and changed and got uncomfortable with COVID, and one in particular, which was fantastic, which is cafe style, but nice, middle of the road cafe. You go for your lunch after work type thing. They were all no plastic, organic, bang, bang, bang. COVID hit, cheapest gear you could find. It's just been literally everything out the window, and I totally get you got to do what you got to do. Then we did what we had to do then as well. But
everybody did.
They never came back from it, because all the core customers who went because they like no plastic and Save the Dolphins or whatever it was, it went out the window for them.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the worst.
And you've got to ask yourself as an industry, is it a case of, does it have to be totally customer driven?
Yeah.
Is it always about getting those customers back, or is it about our almost purchasing power? Do we take the hit? As businesses, I want to make money, you want to make money. That's part of it. But is there a side of it where we have to, from an ethical point of view, be like, well, actually, I'm going to spend 30p or a pound or a couple of quid on something to be able to get something that's having such a positive impact.
Yeah.
And this is really talking to chefs and people involved in the industry. It's like, buy those ingredients, please, and support those companies. Yeah. And because they're the ones who are going to make the difference.
The greatest business lesson it's never been more true as we've got older. We obviously watch Wayne's World, because it's similar to me. Awesome movie. If you book them, they will come. Yeah. And the one thing I've learned, especially since COVID, is stick to the mission. If you stick to the mission and you're passionate about it, people come. If you start trying to second guess yourself, which we have in the past, it's a shit show. Like, you've just got to stick to what you're doing and do it really fucking well, and everyone else will come. And it's hard at times, when times get dark, to stick to that. But sure, if you book them,
and it's belief. That's going into sort of mental health and all that side of things. And I think that's obviously so important. Yeah. But it's the whole, it even breaks down to, like, if you meet somebody in the street and you smile at them, they're going to smile back. Yeah. And, take that as a business practice. Yeah. If you're going to provide, honest, proper food, which is not full of garbage, then people are going to come back. Absolutely. They're going to want more of it, and, promote it and shout about it, and please tell people. Yeah.
But I'd imagine most people will come here because I know I've recommended this place to loads of people. Yeah. And I guarantee they'll then recommend it to, because, again, good vibe, good food.
What, word of mouth?
Yeah, hell
so it's the best.
Yeah,
it's the best advertising you've ever had.
Going back to what we originally said, the Me Too's that popped up since you guys haven't stayed because they're not doing anything original. You guys are original. Stick to your core foundation.
OG, man.
I'll take that. I'll take that. So what's next steps then? What's the next steps for you guys?
Well, we're not. You know what? That is actually something we're discussing. Do we proliferate this out as an idea?
Yeah.
Do we get somewhere bigger?
Yeah.
Do we stick to our guns?
Yeah.
And I think, over the years, having worked for lots of different people, we're maybe a little bit slower to decide exactly what we're doing, because actually talking about it is the best idea.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to keep that under my hat.
Nice.
A little bit.
Nice. Like
and I always wear a hat, so it's fine. But I think moving forward, there's definitely things to come from Bear Kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely sort of, positive movement there. It's just, in terms of weighing up sort of that ethical side and that business side, how can we improve the business as it stands right now.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to leave that. I don't really want to go down.
No, I like it, man. I like it. I like it. Excited. And then final question, because I know you've got some awesome filming to do with Rihanna today. Yeah. So what's your favourite dish that you do? If you were recommending first time. Specials.
Like, I'm not going to turn around. Like, I'm going to be totally...
What's your favourite special you've made?
Oh, no, I don't have favourites. It's like whenever he turns around and goes, oh, what's your sort of signature dish? And all this stuff. Nah, man. Like, no, it's not about that. It's about everything's a moment, isn't it? So you're sat there. It's that ready... It's like, I get enjoyment from that ready, steady cook element where it's like, we've got the odd box in, we've got this in, and, you know, you've got one of the suppliers saying, oh, we've got something else, and you're like, right, well, how can we work all this together to make something amazing?
Wicked.
And that for me is the biggest excitement, not an individual dish. You know, if anything, the stuff that you churn out all the time, a bit boring, isn't it?
I don't know, man. Like, so
it's for a chef, for the creative, it becomes, it's all about standardization and consistency, which is almost the tenets of being a chef in a way. You know, even if you go up to like 3 Michelin stars, the consistency and ensuring that that product is exactly the same every time is the key. And there's an enjoyment within that. But you throw a bunch of items on the table for me and go on, Benny, make something out of this. That's where I get my kick.
Awesome.
And like, you know, and that's what I want to pass on to other people.
Awesome. Brother, well, you're doing an amazing job. Anything else you want the listeners to? They can find you on Insta, Facebook?
Oh yeah, we're on we're on all the social media platforms apart from TikTok, I think. I don't really. Yeah.
I'm going to stay quiet about TikTok. Ryan keeps trying to raise it. I'm like,
dude, yeah, I'm like, too old and China. But yeah, we're on all of that. Check out our website. You know, hopefully there's going to be more of this sort of stuff to come, so you can like hear me talking about, you know, gut microbiomes and, you know, the sort of, you know, health of the nation, if you want, while I sell burgers to people. It sounds so bizarre, but I actually think it's genuinely important.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's really it, is, you know, come in, try what we've got, and, you know, hopefully you'll go away and, as you said, really, it's word of mouth. Go away and cheers, buddy.
Yeah. Love you, man. Awesome.
Socks off. 10 toes down to the ground right now. Right now. Think I finally figured out who I am, what my style, but I'll keep my soul.